Do not be anxious about anything. Someone has probably said that to you while you were already afraid. Maybe it helped. Maybe it only made you feel like you were failing at one more thing. But if that is where the verse stopped for you, it stopped too early. Paul keeps writing. And the next thing he promises is not that you will understand. It is a peace that surpasses what you can understand. A peace that guards your heart and your mind without waiting for your life to make sense first. And Paul wrote that in chains to a church in the very city where he had once been beaten and locked inside a prison. Acts chapter 16. 2 men were dragged into the marketplace of Philippi by people who had lost money because of them. The crowd joined in. The magistrates tore their clothes off and gave orders to beat them with rods. Many blows. That is the phrase the text uses, many. Then they were handed to a jailer with an order to keep them safely. He put them in the inner prison and fastened their feet in the stocks. Open backs, no treatment, wood on the ankles, the deepest room in the building. And then Luke gives the hour. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. They were listening. Men lying in the dark, hearing 2 beaten men sing. And then the ground moved. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundations of the prison were shaken. And immediately all the doors were opened, and everyone's bonds were unfastened. The jailer woke to a wall of open doors. When the jailer woke and saw that the prison doors were open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself, supposing that the prisoners had escaped. Supposing. The doors were open. His fear had reasons. He was doing arithmetic in the dark with the only numbers he could see. And out of the dark, a voice. But Paul cried with a loud voice, "Do not harm yourself, for we are all here." The doors were still open. What changed was not what he could see. A voice came out of the dark and told him what he could not see. He called for lights. He ran in. He was shaking. And on the floor of his own prison, he asked the question that would change his life. "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" Then he took them the same hour of the night and washed their wounds. The same hour. Not in the morning, not after the magistrates were told. That night, with a bowl, the man who had fastened their feet knelt over the marks the rods had left and washed them out. And in the same sentence, Luke says the water came back the other way. He washed their wounds and he was baptized at once, he and all his family. Then he brought them up into his house and put food on his own table. And he rejoiced along with his entire household that he had believed in God. Morning had not come. The magistrates had not changed their order. Nothing downstairs had been settled. And he was setting a table. Years pass. And a letter comes to Philippi from a man who is in chains again. He tells them they're in the same conflict that you saw I had, and now hear that I still have. He does not describe what they saw. He does not have to. And near the end of the letter to those people from that room, he writes the sentence, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God." He does tell them not to be anxious. That part is real. It is not softened anywhere in the letter. But he does not leave a frightened person standing there with nothing except an order to stop. He gives the thing somewhere to go. And most people you know have only ever been handed the first 4 words, which is how a sentence written to hold someone up ends up on the pile. You know the hour it works on you. The half second after the phone lights up at a time nobody calls for good news. Reading 4 sentences again to find the tone underneath them. Standing in a hallway outside a room where somebody you love is asleep, listening for the breathing. And how you can pray for somebody else's situation with your whole chest. And then say your own out loud in one flat line, quickly, the way a man signs for a package he did not want delivered. And underneath all of it is an arrangement you made with yourself so long ago that you have stopped hearing it. When I know how this ends, I will put it down. That is the trade. Understanding first, rest afterward. And it sounds so reasonable that you have never once brought it out into the light and looked at it. So you are not really waiting for God to move. You are waiting for God to explain. And this has to be said plainly. If what you carry has become something that takes your sleep and your work and your body, getting help is not evidence that you failed this verse. Daniel chapter 6. A document has been signed, 30 days. Any petition to any god or man except the king is punished in a den of lions. The men who proposed it knew exactly who they were trying to catch. When Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber, open toward Jerusalem. The windows were open. And it is worth knowing what those windows were facing. Jerusalem had been broken open and burned. He had lived for decades in foreign courts, kneeling toward a city whose temple had not been rebuilt. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as he had done previously. The decree changed that day. Daniel's prayer did not. And the men who were watching found him in the middle of it. They found him making petition and plea before his God, asking, begging, thanking. Centuries before a man in chains wrote prayer and supplication and thanksgiving into a letter to a Roman colony. His thanksgiving came before the outcome. He gave thanks before the ending arrived. And that was not Daniel pretending. The lions were not real. The lions were real. So was God. He was thrown in. And that night the king went back to his palace, behind his own guards, with no lions anywhere near him. He would not eat. Sleep left him. The man in the safer room was the man who could not sleep. In the morning, Daniel was alive. He said God had sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths. And that sentence did not exist yet. On the night he knelt at the window, the thanks came first. It belonged to God, not to the outcome. So do the small version of it here. Name one request. Now thank Him for one thing that is still true before you know the answer. And then Paul keeps writing. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Not the outcome. Your heart, your mind. The promise is not that prayer will guard the circumstance. The promise is that the peace of God will guard your heart and your mind inside it. And 4 words in it undo the arrangement you made with yourself, which surpasses all understanding. Paul does not make the peace wait for the explanation to arrive. Nowhere in that sentence is understanding the condition of it. You told yourself you would put it down when you finally knew. You made understanding the price of rest. Paul never sets that price. He says something will stand between you and the not knowing. The guard does not make the night outside go away. He stands in front of what he has been told to keep. And what he has been told to keep is not your outcome. It is you. And this peace is not a mood you can talk yourself into at 2 in the morning. Paul places the whole promise in Jesus. And of Jesus he writes elsewhere that God was reconciling all things to himself, making peace by the blood of his cross. So none of this rests on how well you held yourself together tonight. So if that verse has ever been handed to you, like a bill you could not pay, you were given the first 4 words. Paul did not leave the anxious heart with a command. He left it with a guard. And the guard was peace.
The day I could see how it ends, so I left it on the table and turned the same page over. I can carry anyone else's name to you with my whole chest and say my own in one flat line, like I am signing for something I never wanted delivered. So here it is, before I know the ending, the true size of it, before I know the ending. And thank stood behind the answer, waiting for me to arrive. The answer has not come, the room has not changed, and I am not alone with the question. You never made me understand it first. 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 You never made me understand.